Friday, June 7th. It was 10:14 p.m. The air in Tampa hung heavy at 79 degrees Fahrenheit, with 68% humidity. I sat quietly by the pool in our backyard, sipping Starbucks Sumatra Bold from an old copper sieve. Porch light bathed the deck in a warm glow. It was a still, ordinary night, until my phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he said. "Sir, are you Mark Davenport? I've been instructed to deliver legal documents." 2 minutes later, I was unlocking the front gate. A young man in a black nylon jacket handed me a thick envelope stamped Clerk of Court, Hillsborough County. He didn't wait. Just turned and disappeared down the sidewalk like someone who'd done this before. Inside were divorce papers, a temporary restraining order, and a series of low-res photos. According to them, I'd been having an affair with a woman named Vanessa. I didn't even recognize her. My shoulders dropped. My skin tightened like plastic wrap. The coffee in my mouth turned metallic, bitter. There was a hum in my ears and something cold lodged just under my ribs. I sat back down, fingers damp against the paperwork. It felt like holding my own obituary. My name is Mark Davenport. I'm 49. 12 years ago, I left the army after a spinal injury in Afghanistan and retrained as an insurance agent. I now work with Pinellas Insurance Group, mostly home and marine coverage along Florida's west coast. Quiet work. Calculable. Predictable. Until now. Lisa and I had been married for 18 years. One son, Colin, now a sophomore at the University of Miami. Lisa worked as a CPA for a small real estate firm in Clearwater. We met through my brother. She was doing his taxes. I'd just returned from a deployment and didn't trust people easily. But her voice was steady. Her hair smelled like lavender. Her handshake was firm. She handed me a folder, and I remember thinking, "This one won't lie to you." That folder, tonight, it was replaced by subpoenas with her signature. I didn't go home. I drove down US 92 to the Bay Breeze Motel. It took less than 20 minutes, but I remember every stoplight. The moist air from Tampa Bay carried the sharp tang of salt and wet plants. My old army dog tags rattled softly in the glove box, a familiar sound, almost grounding. When I parked, the cicadas were louder than my thoughts. But not louder than the question that rang the entire time: who else knew the code to our alarm system? In the motel, I powered up an encrypted SSD and accessed our home surveillance archive. I'd installed the cameras after a break-in last summer. Lisa had called it paranoia. But in intelligence, we had a word for that: survival instinct. Footage showed a man entering the house at 11:12 p.m. He keyed in the security code. Climbed the stairs. 27 minutes later, our bedroom camera caught the sound of muffled laughter. No visuals, just audio. I recognized the gait. The hat. The shoulders. It was Andrew, Lisa's therapist. She said he was helping her cope after her mother's death. I guess he helped her upstairs too. And this wasn't the first red flag. A month earlier, she'd asked for $1,200 for a corporate dinner dress. I remember the receipt I found later, a boutique in St. Pete, designer label. Too much for a CPA at a mid-size firm. I didn't question it then. I do now. I backed up the video to a second drive and locked it in a vault near my office. Then printed the access credentials and tucked them between two LPs in my Columbia Records collection, nearly the full 1950s run. Nestled between Ella Fitzgerald and Miles Davis sat the evidence of my wife's betrayal. From the motel bed, I remembered Kandahar. One operation, we intercepted a courier dressed as a vinyl vendor. He carried 22 pages of agent names hidden in record sleeves. It was that moment I learned, the weight of information isn't in volume, it's in timing. Since then, I've worked ahead of every move. Pain from my injury had taught me silence. But this wasn't that pain. This was quieter, colder. In war, you know your enemy. Tonight I didn't. There was one more memory before I slept: Bayshore Boulevard, early morning. Lisa beside me in faded Nikes, pointing at a half-sunken boat off the pier. She laughed and said, "That's me, trying to go somewhere but anchored to the mud." I'd laughed with her. She was right, I think. She was already drifting. But the next morning, I realized the photos were just foreplay. What really hit me was who paid for Lisa's lawyer, a $15,000 check signed by the man I once called my older brother. Saturday morning clung to Tampa like a second skin. At 7:45 a.m., it was already 81 degrees Fahrenheit, is almost equal to 27 degrees Celsius, and the humidity hit like a wall. I sat in my motel room, shirt clinging to my back, the AC wheezing from the corner, blowing out lukewarm breath. In front of me, my laptop screen, a paper cup of diluted coffee, and a window facing the parking lot, where tourists in sandals shuffled under the rising sun. I studied Lisa's bank statement. The night before, I'd received confirmation from a contact at her bank. Her lawyer, Jennifer Harris, hadn't been paid from her personal account. A $15,000 payment had cleared a month ago. The name on the sender's line, David Wells. I didn't exhale in shock. Just stared at the signature a second longer. David and I served together, started a small business together, then took different paths. But we never lost touch. He was there after the hospital, after Colin was born, when my father died. I thought he was a brother. I remembered him teaching Colin how to cast a fishing line at Lake Tarpon. 8 summers ago. Humid air, mosquitoes, the smell of corn bait. Colin kept fouling the reel, and David said, "It's all in the wrist. Don't muscle it, use momentum." I remember thinking, this is what real friendship looks like. I didn't call. I drove to his Clearwater office. Parked in the shade of a cypress tree. At 9:23 a.m. he came out, light shirt, Wawa coffee in hand. I watched him pass by unmoved. Only when his outline faded in the rear view did I punch the GPS for Bay Breeze Motel. On the way, I stopped at a supermarket. Bought a notepad, a black Sharpie, a bottle of water, a pack of Orbit spearmint gum. Back in the room, I opened the notebook and started writing. Names. Dates. Account numbers. Places. Anything that mattered. Lists are my armor. As long as the pen moves, I control the chaos. I remembered Kandahar, 11 hours in a ditch, silent. David covered for me when I slipped on a rock and rustled the brush. He said, "Step left, and you'd be a memory." I answered, "There was a snake on the left." We were quiet for a minute. Then we laughed. But the real moment came in Helmand Province. Our Humvee hit an IED buried under gravel. Smoke in the cabin, diesel fumes, 3 guys wounded. I was stuck between the seats, right leg pinned. David pulled me out under fire. I still remember him yelling, "Breathe, Mark!" dragging me out the back door. That felt like brotherhood. Now? A farce. I went downtown to the bank. Pulled a B112 ticket at the entrance. The lobby smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. A couple of retirees stood ahead of me. She held a wide-brimmed hat. He muttered about interest rates. The AC coughed warm air, and CNN flickered on a plasma screen, warning of storms over Louisiana. I sat still. Each minute a wait. Then the screen blinked, B112. The clerk was an older man named Ken, with a vet pin on his collar. He said, "Served?" I answered, 82nd Recon. Kandahar. He nodded. He said, "What are we looking for?" I answered, "A check. Lawyer payment. Someone else's divorce." No questions. Just quiet efficiency. As I waited, the dot matrix printer clattered like a miniature weapon. The paper slid into the laminator. Ken stamped it precisely. The smell of toner and plastic was oddly sharp, like I'd stepped into a museum of someone else's decisions. With every click of the printer, I heard echoes of gunfire, but instead of lead paper evidence rolled out. I took the check. David's company logo, date, amount, signature. Walked out. The heat hit like a slap. The sidewalk reeked of sunbaked asphalt and jasmine from a nearby planter. In Florida, night heat smells like salt, concrete, and flowers that never ask for rain. I remembered a dinner Lisa hosted after I got out of the hospital. She served sliced steak, David poured sauce over my mashed potatoes, joked about combat rations. It felt real back then, the smell of seared meat, her laughter, his toast. Now it played back like an old tape, faded, rehearsed, fake. Back at the motel, I opened my laptop. A report from Rick had arrived. The second account sending Lisa money belonged to a fund. Name: CNC Foundation. Colin and Claire. Claire died during childbirth. We hardly spoke of her. Lisa remembered. And used it. $72,000. I did the math. $1,200 monthly equals 60 months. Or $6,000 spread 12 times. Too neat, too silent. Strategy. Information is a weapon. I collect it like racking a bolt. Quiet. Clean. Precise. Later, in the room, the neon vacancy sign blinked like a weak pulse. The air freshener reeked of fake pine and truck stop fatigue. Through the thin walls, the TV in the next room droned on, someone else's life, still moving. Morning began with salt on my lips and silence. By 5:45 a.m., I was already on Sunshine Beach. A gray dawn lit the sky. The sand underfoot felt cold, grains sharp like memories. Waves rolled in lazily, and the Gulf breeze pulled against my skin, carrying echoes of history. I ran along the tide line, feeling every muscle respond, not with pain, but with life. The salty air triggered that familiar taste, the metallic hint of blood from an old wound. I remembered Jerry, my recon partner, visiting here on leave. He once said, "This is the only place you can forget who we are." 3 months later, he was gone, an IED in Kandahar. I've never forgotten since. Every other breath I sink to a countdown in my head, plan, move, reaction. A steady pulse, like lying in ambush for 17 minutes, not moving an inch. Today, my first move. I paused and stretched deliberately. Doctors once forbade running on hard sand, stress on joints. But I ran anyway. Always. If the body listens, the mind is still holding the front line. As long as I command myself, I'm alive. Everything else is mission. By 8 a.m. I was at Java Tide Cafe, Rick's favorite on Bayshore Drive. Bright, warm place, the smell of fresh coffee, vanilla, and cinnamon hung in the air. The barista, with a coffee bean tattoo, steamed milk behind the counter. A leather bench creaked. Rick waited at a corner table, papers and a tablet ready. He said, 12 transfers of $6,000 exactly, on schedule. I replied, "That's not coincidence." He said, "One hit on your anniversary." I replied, "A gift, just not to me." The barista slammed the portafilter onto the machine's rubber bumper with a thud that transported me back to the pier, where Lisa had raised a toast. To 18 more years, with no secrets. The froth tickled my tongue then. Now it tastes like rust, secrets that cost $6,000 each time. He flipped the spreadsheet. He said, "Third sender is Sun Capital LLC, director's a shell. Just a front company." I replied, "So it's not divorce, it's active asset moving." He nodded. "Classic. With personal stakes." Before heading to Clearwater Legal, I stopped at a Circle K. The smell of raw gasoline stung, regular 87 poured out thick, like kerosene. On the pump's tiny screen, ads flashed for payday loans. "Need cash today? Only 6% APR." The numbers dripping into your account felt like drops of blood on a combat chart. I wiped fuel off my palm. Money always smells the same, even when it runs through dirty hands. The drive down scorching Highway 19 was brutal. The asphalt shimmered, smell of burned brake pads crept in. Looming overhead, a billboard screamed, "Injury lawyers, we fight!" I was heading to fight in a different battlefield. By 11:30, I was in Clearwater Legal. Sunlight streaked through glass, the room smelled of hot metal and copy toner. A stern female attorney, around 50, studied the files. She said, "Your evidence is solid. We can request a temporary freeze on the funds." I replied, "Do it." Now. She stamped the forms. The stapler clicked crisp and loud, like a bolt locking home. She said, "We'll need your oath. Probably a court hearing, too." I nodded. An oath? In the military, it might have cost someone's life. Now? It's my name on the line. But I won't back down. Never. It was 5:45 p.m. at Tampa Fit's parking lot. The heat trapped on asphalt. I stood beside my car as David approached, keys in hand. I told myself, no anger. Only facts. The rearview blinked green, go. But I stayed. He said, "You showed." I replied, "You knew I would." He said, "Lisa said you wouldn't survive another trial." "I thought I was protecting you." I replied, "You wired $15,000 to my wife's lawyer. That's not protection. That's betrayal." He froze. This time his eyes held something new, not fear, not guilt. Recognition. He said, "You still don't know who's behind this." I replied, "Then I know where to look." He said, "I saw her new consultant. Your cameras won't catch his face." I replied, "They'll catch his mistakes." A car engine rumbled behind us. My ears went dull. The air thickened like the moment before a storm. I tasted metal in my mouth, like the day in a chopper over Helmand when I realized the pilot was hit. Later, in the car, the AC pumped warm, dusty air. A song from our wedding clip played on the radio. I muted it. Silence. On the dashboard flashed the alert, check. In my mind I heard the echo, check, time to move. The sky had shifted to orange-gray gradient. A breeze carried bay salt dust. I heard a distant motorboat barking across the harbor. It cut the stillness, and vanished in a heartbeat, like a shot that missed. I held that moment, a pause before the inevitable return. Now I knew, David's not king. Not even the queen. Just a pawn. The real game is just beginning. The sun had already burned through the haze by the time I stepped onto the back porch. Plus 81 degrees Fahrenheit is almost equal to 27 degrees Celsius, and the humidity clung like a damp towel to the skin. From the fence post, the garden sensor blinked green, motion detected. I turned off the system manually. Didn't want the footage stored. "Not yet," he said. "Morning, ma'am." The courier's voice was neutral, official. He wheeled a dolly with a small box wrapped in brown tape, stopped, and took out his phone. I watched him tap twice, sending a photo of the package with GPS. He slid the box under the porch, tapped, "Delivered," and glanced at the appraisal firm logo on his sleeve. Then he climbed back into his van and drove off. The courier and the legal delivery were linked. I'd just seen the evidence. The box sat like a planted charge at her door. I watched from the rental car, parked across the street. Matte black Chevy Traverse, 2021 model, still smelling faintly of showroom vinyl. In the glove compartment, the compact Glock 26 rested in its molded holster. Checked, loaded, returned. Not today. I drove away. The Veterans Expressway crawled with traffic, diesel fumes, brake dust, and a billboard advertising homeowners insurance. Protect your legacy. 1,500 square feet from $2,300 per month. Class, control, cost. The contrast was clear. Back at Bay Breeze, I pulled the black notebook from the nightstand and added 2 lines. Lisa's schedule, the courier's company, timestamp, 8/12. A Sharpa and a sheet of graph paper. Lists, my armor. When pen meets page, chaos becomes sequence. The more sequence, the less confusion. 3 hours later, the knock at my motel door came. She said, "You're being served, Mr. Davenport." A polite receptionist from Clearwater Legal handed me a cream envelope, stapled and sealed. She said, "Client, Rebuild US Incorporated." I opened it with a keycard. Inside, a 3-page motion, Lisa's counterclaim. Emotional distress. Loss of reputation. Custodial unfitness due to alleged PTSD. My throat tightened. The paper felt heavier than it should, like armor plating. The words crawled with sterile menace. They knew which chords to pluck. Combat. Sanity. Fatherhood. I answered with motion. Drove to my attorney's office in Largo, 40 minutes west. Melissa Cruz, family law, second-generation Cuban, fierce as they come. The office smelled of polished mahogany, and walls lined with plaques. A miniature Cuban flag sat beside a Baldwin piano adorned with my daughter's soccer trophy. Melissa furrowed her brow as she read custodial unfitness, and glanced at the affidavit notes. She said, "You'll need sworn affidavits. We start there." A silence hung. Then her assistant began copying documents, their steps muffled on carpet. I realized, this fight would be louder than any courtroom storm. She added quietly, "And email me that Client Vision 2023 PDF tonight." While her paralegal copied the file, I skimmed it again. A pitch deck for Rebuild US, registered for 2 months, addresses in Tallahassee, a listed board of shell names, no real activity. It was a paper fortress. That night, after returning to the motel, I cleaned the compact Glock 26 at the small table. Crafted movements, oiling the barrel. Then I laid it under my pillow. From the next room, I heard raised voices arguing about last night's baseball score. "We need runs!" someone shouted. I thought, I have a different game tonight. On the pier across from my window, a boy launched a drone. It lifted, hovered, then sputtered and plunged into the black water. The splash echoed like a warning. Any system fails when it loses its signal. She wants to erase me from their lives. I will erase her name from their legacy. The courthouse in downtown Tampa felt unnaturally cold for a Florida morning. Air conditioners roared as though they expected snow, and the marble floor threw back a pale, surgical light. At 8:10 I walked the corridor toward Family Court, each step echoing with a discipline that reminded me of forward bases: heel, toe, heel, no waste, no hurry. Inside the antechamber, Lisa wasn't there in person. A wall-mounted screen showed her perfectly lit living room. She sat off-center, soft focus, like an anchor on daytime TV. Her attorney, Evelyn Harkness, waited by the door, dark graphite suit, silver cufflinks, a leather folder stamped HLG. Evelyn nodded, but Lisa's image never changed. The clerk called the case. He said, "Case 24C-1785, Davenport vs. Davenport, emergency hearing on temporary custody." I took my seat beside Melissa Cruz. She opened her laptop. Rows of evidence files glowed on the screen. In front of me lay a new page in the black notebook, white, untouched, mission ready. Heart rate steady at 58. The judge enters. Judge Collins, no robe, just rolled up sleeves and a vest, looked like he had jogged in from breakfast. He leafed through both files quickly. He said, "Mrs. Davenport alleges covert surveillance, combat-related PTSD, and danger to the children. Mr. Davenport, your response?" I answered, "Verified military evaluations show no crisis indicators, Your Honor. Character references and service record are in evidence. I am prepared to testify under oath." Melissa clicked. A letter from an Army psychiatrist filled the courtroom monitors. "Patient stable. No dissociative episodes. Fit for civilian life." Collins read, then nodded. In my periphery I caught the tiniest twitch at Evelyn's lip, like she'd bitten down on the word damn. First recess, quiet strike. During the 10-minute break Judge Collins stepped out, and Evelyn drifted over like a shark smelling data. She said, "While you play honest soldier, your marital trust is emptying. Sun Capital is liquidating assets this very hour to finance Mrs. Davenport's litigation." Melissa said, "Any sale before ruling is dissipation of community property. We'll claw it back." I stayed silent, remembering the thud of a portafilter against steel, the precise percussion baristas used to bleed pressure. Evelyn was tamping now, exact and brutal. The surprise witness. Court resumed. The clerk called Frank. He said, "Financial investigator Frank Terrence to the stand." Frank straightened his oatmeal-colored tie and dropped a stack of ledgers onto the evidence table. He said, Funds from the nonprofit Rebuild US did not flow to charitable programs. Instead, they routed to RT Strategic Holdings, Samoa. Company owner, Rhett Tiller, a former consultant at the clinic where Lisa Davenport worked. Evelyn rose, but Judge Collins lifted a palm. He said, "We will schedule Mr. Tiller for testimony. The documents are admitted." RT, so it wasn't an acronym for a trust. It was a man, one who had slipped into our lives the day Lisa quit the clinic. Midday heat outside. By lunch break, the courthouse patio smelled of food truck carnitas and wet asphalt. My phone buzzed. Melissa said, "Judge leans toward joint custody, but Harkness keeps pressing the PTSD angle. We need a counterstrike." I answered, "I have one in mind." I called Frank. I said, "Dig hard on RT strategic payments to legal counsel. Any link to Harkness litigation." He said, "There's a $25,000 transfer last month labeled consulting fee. I said, "Send copies before 2:30. Afternoon confrontation. Back inside, I noticed Evelyn's laptop was offline, her bag half unzipped, a sign she'd scrambled to shred something. Melissa laid freshly printed wire receipts on the desk. She said, "Your Honor, we have proof of direct payment from RT Strategic to counsel for the petitioner. That constitutes undisclosed interest." Collins peered over his glasses. He said, "Ms. Harkness' response?" She said, "Our firm provided routine corporate advisory. Unrelated to this matter." I scribbled in the notebook, "Advisory is not equal to bribe." Moments later the clerk hurried in with a sealed order. He said, "Emergency request from the state attorney, freeze on Rebuild US and Sun Capital accounts pending fraud investigation." The judge's gavel cracked. He said, "Order granted. Custody hearing continued 1 week. Produce expanded discovery." Lisa's video feed paled, sound cut for a beat. My neck muscles unclenched for the first time that day. Back to the board. Frank intercepted me in the corridor. He said, "RT's got another stash, Costa Rica, 90 grand. Might be witness money." I replied, "File a FinCEN notice today. Let them feel the oxygen thin." At the Chevy I sat with the engine off. The Glock in the glove box lay inert, just a calibrated tool. A garage billboard across the street read alignment and balance, stay straight. Right message. Lighting the fuse. In the motel after sunset I uploaded Client Vision 2023 and Frank's spreadsheets to an encrypted drop. Local investigative reporters had begged for a lead on charity fraud. I handed them fire. I said to the screen, "A controlled burn. Let their field ignite." 15 minutes later the push alert hit my phone. Breaking: Tampa divorce linked to offshore charity scheme. The first mortar. Tail on Causeway Boulevard. Driving east, the sky bled orange into the bay. In my mirror a black Audi materialized, holding exactly 3 car lengths. I decelerated to 40, it mirrored me. At a turnout I eased onto the shoulder. The Audi crept past, windows tinted, driver wearing a baseball cap. Dust masked the plate, but 3 letters flashed through grime, RTS. The exhaust roared once and the car vanished toward Gandhi Bridge. With a finger I traced the letters into the pollen on my hood, RTS, so I wouldn't forget when the storm started. A block farther I pulled over again. The dashboard clock read 1957. Warm air rushed through the vents. Outside, gulls screamed over darkening water. I opened the notebook to a clean page. Phase 4, expose Rhett Tiller, isolate counsel, secure custody. Failure probability, 12%. Contingency, tactical witness subpoena. I closed the cover, feeling the thickness of recorded days, weight of a shield built line by line. She wants me erased from their lives. I will engrave the truth on every ledger she touched. Because I don't play for check. I play for mate. First light bled into the motel room before my phone began chirping like an anxious bird. The Tampa Morning News looped the same headline over grainy b-roll of Lisa's villa. Charity scam could upend high-profile divorce. The anchor's smile wavered every time the words offshore and fraud appeared on the teleprompter. I muted the TV. Noise helps only when it's mine. I checked the trap we had sprung on Rhett Tiller's laptop overnight. The mirrored directory kept uploading. Blue progress bars crept across the screen like incoming tracer rounds. Each time a bar finished, another folder bloomed: emails, account ledgers, 2 scanned passports. I watched until I saw the one file I needed: RT Harkness Consult 25k.pdf. Digital fingerprints, date stamped and time stamped, the kind a judge can't ignore. A breeze slipped through the window unit, carrying the tang of the bay and cheap detergent from the motel laundry. I holstered the Glock under my belt, locked the laptop in a Pelican case, and took the stairs 2 at a time. Mission clock started now. Traffic on Kennedy Boulevard was thick with commuters toggling between coffee and podcasts. I parked across from the Federal Building, 5 minutes before it opened. Inside, fluorescent tubes buzzed overhead while the clerk scanned the blue-backed compendium of evidence Frank had printed at dawn. He said, "Mr. Davenport, these are allegations of wire fraud and money laundering. You swear this is complete?" I answered, "This is only the first load. More is uploading as we speak." He signed the intake form with a practiced flourish, stamped it twice, and placed the file in a red bin marked Financial Crimes. Paper armor, filed and indexed. Outside, the humidity smashed into me like a wet blanket. I took 2 steady breaths. Step 1 done. Melissa Cruz met me at her office just after 9. She wore a navy dress, hair pulled back, the Cuban flag pinned glittering on her lapel. On her conference table sat 2 manila folders and a fresh affidavit template. She said, "Judge Collins reconvenes custody on Friday. We need collateral witnesses." I slid the Pelican case toward her. I said, "Federal filing. Harkness and Tiller are officially under investigation. That will buy us leverage." She flipped through the contents, eyebrows climbing. Then she cracked a smile, half victory, half disbelief. She said, "If this sticks, Lisa's side will scramble." A knock. Melissa's paralegal poked her head in. She said, "Process server on line 1. They're having trouble delivering the deposition notice to Mr. Tiller. Yacht crew claims he sailed at dawn." I noted the irony. The man shepherding money offshore had literally gone offshore. Predictable. I called Frank. He said, "Coast Guard logs show Devil's Advocate cleared the channel at 5:12, heading south by southwest. AIS signal cut an hour later." I answered, "Sinks or swims, we'll track him. Push a bolo to customs." Frank chuckled. He said, "Already did. They'll light him up if he hits Key West." Midday sun scorched the hood of the Traverse as I rolled toward the university. Collins' sociology lecture ended at 1. I wanted 10 minutes face-to-face before any shadow sedan could circle campus. He stepped out of the humanities building, backpack slung across one shoulder, earbuds dangling. For a moment he looked 12 again, same stubborn cowlick, same quick scan of the horizon. My chest tightened. I said, "Lunch?" He nodded, cautious but willing. We sat at a picnic table under an oak. Cicadas whined overhead. I handed him a laminated card, emergency numbers, Melissa's direct line, my motel and burner phone. He said, "Mom says you're spying on her." I replied, "Mom hired people who followed you. I hired myself. Big difference." He turned the card over twice. He said, "Is it really this bad?" I answered, "Worse. But it ends sooner if we stay calm." A gust rattled moss along the branches. He pocketed the card without meeting my eyes. One seed planted. As I pulled away, I spotted the black Audi from yesterday parked half a block off, nose angled toward the quad. Plates scrubbed clean now, windows darker than legal tint. Night still shadowing the pawn. Let him. By late afternoon a storm line stacked over the Gulf, sky bruising violet. I met Frank in a rental workspace near the airport. He had printed the Custody Strategy Phase 2 PDF, red pen circling key phrases. "Emergency relocation, Guardian ad litem delay, media reframing," he said. "Tiller's laptop gave us exact routes, private charters from Tampa exec to Marsh Harbor. Guess where your kids' passports are renewed? Bahamian consulate, 6 weeks ago. I felt a slow burn rise under the sternum, not fury, ignition. Fuel. I said. We leak the kidnapping plan tonight. Frank's brow arched. He said. Nuclear? I nodded. Controlled nuclear. Anonymous tip to the same reporter. Headline, Divorce plot widens, international custody flight risk. He logged into the dead drop reporter inbox and attached the file. I watched the progress bar creep, the storm outside pressing against windows like a giant hand. After dark, lightning forked behind the skyline as I drove east alongside the bay. The Audi reappeared in the mirror, headlights haloed by rain. I guided the Traverse onto an empty service road, slowed to 20. The Audi crowded my bumper, wipers slashed water in white arcs. I braked to a crawl. The Audi jolted, skidded, then surged past. Driver's side glass rolled down a fraction. He said, Last warning, Davenport. You don't see the board. Rain hammered the roof. I kept both hands on the wheel. I answered, I invented the board. The Audi fishtailed back into the main lane and vanished in spray. I sat, engine idling, heartbeat settled. Move acknowledged. Back in the motel I found the power out, only my room. Breaker flipped, or hand pulled. The neon vacancy sign outside flickered red through the curtain. Inside, air hung hot and detergent thick. On the bed lay another envelope, smaller than the first, sealed with red wax. Inside, a single white bishop from a travel chess set and a memory card. I inserted the card into the laptop, 30 seconds of grainy video, Colin walking the dorm corridor, timestamp current, no audio. Then the screen cut to black, words in white. Promotion is off the table. Resign. Threat clear, tactic ancient. Intimidate, isolate, break will. I ejected the card, snapped it in half, tossed both pieces into the sink. The bishop I kept, rolling it between thumb and forefinger until the plastic warmed to body temperature. I whispered, You chose chess. I choose endgame. I picked up the notebook, opened to a fresh spread, and wrote in heavy block letters. Secure physical protection for children. Motion for emergency sole custody. Federal kidnapping alert if Tiller lands outside U.S. Ink bled slightly in the humid air, like blood spreading under gauze. They wanted silence. I answered with thunder. Their next piece is airborne. Mine is already in position on every square they thought was empty. The motel room still smelled of motel laundry and gun oil when my phone began to strobe with alerts. Tampa's morning news cycle had locked on the scandal. Charity scam could upend high-profile divorce. Every local anchor parroted the phrase offshore fraud. I killed the volume. Noise only helps if it's mine. Frank Terrence had texted at dawn. FinCEN accepted our report. Formal investigation underway. Subpoenas landing at Sun Capital and RT Strategic today. A second ping followed. Trap on Tiller's laptop still dumping. Found a PDF that proves the $25,000 payoff to Harkness. The blue progress bars on my screen crawled like tracer rounds, each one another folder of his secrets. Good. Paper gasoline had found its spark. At 5:45 I merged onto Causeway Boulevard, rain streaking the windshield in diagonal spears. Colin's first class let out at 10. Security cams had already picked up a black Audi circling the dorm lot. No margin for error. I parked beside the Humanities building and texted a single word, bag. He appeared 8 minutes later, backpack almost empty, eyes calculating every parked sedan. He said, 2 guys in suits were waiting by the stairs. Said Mom sent them. I replied, they're looking for leverage, not luggage. Belt on. Traffic throttled us north, windshield wipers drumming like a metronome. Colin stared out the side window, silent. When we reached the courthouse just before noon, storm clouds had fallen back toward the Gulf, leaving the air brutally bright. Inside the family court floor, fluorescent lights buzzed like wasps in a jar. Lisa appeared by video from her villa, no soft focus filter now, eyes rimmed red, hair pulled in a rush. Her new attorney, Ramirez, a fresh-faced litigator from Orlando, flipped through a digital file as if speed alone could create evidence. Judge Collins, sleeves rolled, brows knit, wasted no time. He said, "Mrs. Davenport alleges PTSD, covert surveillance, and danger to the children. Mr. Davenport, your reply?" I answered, "Documented evaluations show I'm clear. The danger is a relocation plan executed without court approval." Melissa Cruz called up the file labeled Custody Strategy Phase 2. The words flashed 2 meters high. Emergency relocation, Bahamas, target date Q4. Then came Homeland Security's freeze order on rebuild U.S. and Sun Capital. Ramirez objected. She said, "Your Honor, this data was obtained illegally." Melissa tapped the next slide. Login logs showing Rhett Tiller himself had taken the bait. Melissa said, "The theft was his. We merely retrieved our property." Judge Collins studied the chain of custody and then spoke like a hammer falling. He said, "Temporary sole custody is granted to Mr. Davenport until federal matters resolve. Mrs. Davenport is restricted to supervised virtual contact." The gavel cracked. Lisa's screen froze. Her new counsel exhaled what sounded like defeat. By the time the reporters outside could shout questions, rain returned in tropical sheets. I offered a single sentence to their microphones. "Courts settle money, fathers protect children." Then I moved Colin into the Chevy, engine already running. Melissa phoned as I edged onto I-4. She said, "We just served Harkness with a conflict of interest notice. She's flipping, offered to cooperate for limited immunity." I replied, "One bishop switches color, the board adjusts." Frank pinged again. Tiller left the marina before dawn, filed south-southwest flight plan from Fort Pierce to Marsh Harbor. AIS dropped an hour later. He followed with a grainy photo of Tiller boarding a Cessna. The timestamp read 5:12. Below that, Frank wrote, "Coast Guard alerted." We angled south, wet asphalt hissing under tires. At a lonely shell I briefed Colin. I said, "Your passport is safe?" "Good. Keep it locked." He asked one question, he said, "Is Mom going to jail?" I answered, "That's up to the feds. My job is making sure you stay free." Past noon we reached Gonzalez Air Charter's Perimeter Road, rusted chain link, puddles reflecting a sky like bruised metal. Tiller's Cessna still idled, propeller biting rain. 2 figures hauled luggage, navy polo, mirrored shades. That was Tiller. Beside him, a pilot in a rain jacket. Process server Earl jogged beside me, envelopes sealed with state letterhead, shoulders that still looked marine ready. He said, "Federal subpoena and civil notice." "Ready?" I replied. "Serve and seal." 20 meters. The propeller whined down. Tiller spotted us, spooked, and sprinted for the ladder. Earl's stride ate distance. The envelope slapped Tiller's chest. He said, "You've been served." I added loud enough for the cockpit. "Leaving the country now is kidnapping, not vacation." Pilot killed the engine. Game over. Storm lines rolled inland behind us, thunder growling like heavy artillery. Back in Tampa, Frank met me in a co-working office, laptop alive with new loot from Tiller's dyed machine, private jet charters, a revised guardianship petition in the Bahamas, and chillingly, a bullet point line reading, "Leverage threat photo of son." Whoever took the picture of Colin was working straight from Tiller's playbook. Frank said, "Coast Guard has the yacht. Homeland cut Costa Rica funds." "Tiller's pinned," I replied. "Lisa's ground under her. Next she'll try public sympathy." He said, "Media spin?" I answered, "We preempt." We drafted an anonymous tip to the same reporter who broke the charity story, screenshots of Tiller's relocation agenda, plus the intimidation photo. 10 minutes after send, a banner alert hit local news sites. "Federal agents probe possible custody abduction plot." Echoes spread faster than the storm. Night smeared the city in wet neon. Driving back to Bay Breeze, I clocked the same black Audi hugging 3 car lengths. Rain blurred its outline, but even through spray I saw dusty letters on the plate, RTS. I slowed to 20. The Audi edged closer until our bumpers nearly kissed spray. When I braked to a crawl, It lurched past, and a window cracked 2 inches. He said, "Last warning? Stop your move." I replied, "You're out of moves." Engine roared, taillights vanished into the curtain of rain. I let the Traverse idle. Heartbeat 60, steady. Power was out again in the motel. Only my room, breaker tripped or thumped. The corridor smelled of wet carpet and ozone. On the bed lay a chestnut black, its felt bottom smeared with something dark. Beside it a micro SD card. I slotted it into the laptop. Shaky video of Colin walking between classes today. Under the footage, white text. "Promotion is cancelled. Resign." I crushed the card in paper napkins, flushed the fragments. The night I pocketed next to the white bishop, both colors, now mine. At 23:40 thunder cracked directly overhead, shaking the cheap window frames. I opened the notebook, wrote 3 lines in thick sharpet. Federal Witness Protection Request for Colin. Push for permanent sole custody. Criminal complaint, conspiracy to commit international kidnapping. Ink spread under humidity like blood through gauze. I closed the cover, slid the Glock under the pillow, and lay back. Outside, the vacancy sign flickered red, heartbeat of a city that never learned quiet. She wants my name erased from their story. I will etch the truth on every page she tried to shred. Piece by piece, until only checkmate remains. Subscribe if you want more stories based on real emotions, about real men who don't shout. They act. Cold. To the end. And drop a comment with the city you're watching from. Cheating Tales Real Stories.